Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started here in a few minutes. Just wanted to make sure we let everybody drop into the room. You see our distinguished panel here. Do me a favor while everybody's dropping into the room, please go ahead and say hello in the chat box. I'd love to see where everybody is logging in from. You see, we've got quite a crew on camera today, so got a good group coming in. I love it. So we have folks, and one of the things that's really fun about when we do these for our panelists is that we have people that log in from all over the world, and we have. As I told you, today is a holiday in the United States, so we definitely have a lot of folks from the U.S. We have folks from Germany, Vietnam, Canada, and all over. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few folks living in Spain too, as well. So okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So. A couple of things for everybody. If you have questions, please feel free to ask questions. This is a really open opportunity for everybody to understand what Grandes Pagos de España is, as well as to get to interact with some of its members. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rick Fisher. I am the Spanish Programs Director for the Wine Scholar Guild, and I created and teach the Spanish Wine Scholar program. And so for me, it's truly an honor to be able to moderate a discussion on what is truly one of Spain's treasures, and that is this organization called Grandes Pagos de España. And so you can see a lot of folks online here. And what we're going to do is we're going to, just to kind of give you guys an idea as to how things are going to work today, we are going to have a short introduction as to what Grandes Pagos de España is, try to help give you a little bit of the background of it, help dispel some of the confusion about the organization. And then we have representatives from 3 different bodegas, 3 different wineries from around Spain. We have from Catalonia, we have Xavier and Leo Gramona. I'm sure most of you probably recognize that name. And then from the Ribera del Duero in Castilla y León, we have María and Miguel. And then from Mallorca, the beautiful island of Mallorca, we have Araceli and Javier Ribas from Bodega Ribas. And so without further ado, and also I'm sorry, B, Beatriz Hernandez, who is the manager of Grandes Pagos de España. And she is the one that has the whip and makes sure everybody is in line. So thank you all for joining me today. And so what we're going to do is we do have some introductory slides. And I believe, Maria, you are going to start us off, right?
Yes, I'm going to. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to be here to talk to you with Spanish wines, and especially with wines from with the Association of Grandes Pagos de España. In Spain, we have different types of wine appellations, like DO, it's appellation of origin. Qualified or not qualified. Vino de Pago is a single state wine, or Vino de la Tierra, it's wines of the region. All of them are the legal framework, but for Grandes Pagos de España, all of them can be part of this association, because we only look for the same philosophy. That is, it can be one winery from one DO, from Vino de la Tierra, or from one IJP. It doesn't matter if they share with us the philosophy. They can be inside Grandes Pagos de España. It's important to say that we are now 35 wineries inside the association, And among all, we make more than 4 million bottles. We own about 6,500 of acres, and we are in 22 different regions of wine in Spain. And one example of our philosophy is that from these 35 wineries, 25 of them are organic and 6 are on biodynamic or in process to be on biodynamic.
Hello, I'm Araceli from Bodega Ribas, and thank you, the Wine Scholar Guild, for inviting us. I'm here to explain you what is Grandes Pagos. Grandes Pagos de España, or GPE, is a non-profit association that brings together a group of wineries with a common mission. We are here to defend and promote estate wines. Wines produced in a well-respected piece of land that has been worked and understood by our people. From these plots and that surround the wineries, GPE producers make wines in harmony with the soil, the climate, and natural surroundings. Our aim is to express every unique terroir in the wines of each partner. Respect for nature and sustainable development are also essential pillars at GPE. We are a big family of 35 wineries united by the same common goal and the same work philosophy. Grandes Pagos de España forms an important knowledge network. We exchange experiences in order to promote and improve our work as vintners. And we also share practices, good practices and research to develop and modernize the wine sector. We all have interest and are very committed to constant improvement. And partnership and collaboration are one of the most important parts of the corporate culture in GPE.
Xavier, is that
all right then. All right, yes, of course, yes. So just to understand, I would explain a bit about the mission of members and the control of quality control we establish. And well, to understand the mission of members, we have to understand how it was created about 20 years ago. There was no much winemakers in Spain trying to present themselves in the market as terroir wines, or we would say here, vinos de la tierra, no? But terroir wines in the sense of parcel wines. And at that time, a group of winemakers decided that it was time to try to export to the world the idea that in Spain, there were not only a few, but a huge number of people willing to present the identity of the paysage and to express the piece of land through a wine. So the image of the wine in Spain, as you may know, those who are at my age at least, they might remember it was something else. So that at the time, the founders, they were looking for people who had this idea. And nowadays, you can either knock to the door of Grandes Pagos, or you can be called even by Grandes Pagos. And obviously, not everybody making this kind of wines and having this philosophy in Spain is in Grandes Pagos, but we can assure you that all the people in Grandes Pagos, they follow this philosophy. So, for instance, the case of Gramona, most of Grandes Pagos wines or Pagos wines in the past were red wines, some few white wines in Spain. And we were called by Grandes Pagos founders to be included as a sparkling wine. And at the time, there was a selection of sparkling wines. They made blind tastings. All the members at the time, that was kind of 10 years ago. And we were asked to go into Grandes Pagos and explain our idea of a sparkling wine. And that's how we enter. So nowadays, it happens exactly the same. We can either call someone we think it's representative and who can accomplish all the strict regulations, or we can be called by anybody who is willing to join us. And by joining us, they will interchange research, they will interchange knowledge, they will meet together a few times a year to give us different information about agriculture, winemaking, and every new issues we might think can improve wine or can improve our vision of the land, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a cultural interaction. It's also a way to express ourselves by exporting all together, traveling around the world and explaining that Spain has this kind of wines. And so anybody who is giving us some of this, say, positive input will be invited to come in. So, last but not least, we have a system of control, so that every year we have an external committee that tastes blindly all our wines, and they have to approve. They have to be on a score of 20. They have to be at least 16. They have to have a wine who is 16, scored 16, and no one should be scoring above 14. This committee is managed by a professional, very known sommelier, and it's not static, but it's made by few group of different sommeliers, totally independent. They don't know what they taste. They just give the scores, and all the sellers have to be using Grandes Pagos as a stamp only in case they approve every couple of times a year all the tastings. So that's another thing I think it's interesting for you to know. So sorry for the time. I know I'm very long always.
No,
so let's go.
You're fine, Xavier. Actually,
so what's next?
B, can you go back to the map real quick? Because I really want people to take a look and see how Grandes Pagos de España is represented around the country. I mean, this is, as Xavier just mentioned, this is an organization that started about 20 years ago and has continued to grow. They have members that like you can see here represent almost every part of the country, with the exception of the Canary Islands, at least right now. But they also have applications that are constantly coming in too. So I think that that's really important for you guys to understand. The other thing I really want people to understand, and this was something that Maria talked about at the beginning, was how all of the Spanish wine law system, whether it's a vino de la tierra, denominación de origen, or a vino de pago, which is as an estate winery, those all, I mean, any of them can be a part of Grandes Pagos. They are a distinguishing group of members. And so what we're going to do now, we're going to actually spend a little time with each of the three bodegas, and we're going to start with Gramona. And so we have Xavier Gramona, who you just heard from, and his son, Leo Gramona. And so what we wanted to do, and I'll leave this open to either one of the two of you, to share, but can you give us a little bit of a background as to how Gramona got started and how, what is your philosophy? Now, I have to tell people, to be fair, I've been to Gramona a couple of years ago. It's an absolutely incredible visit. Their mindset and their philosophy and what they do is incredible. And I really want you guys to hear that, from Xavier and Leo. So one of the two of you, share a little bit about your history and about, what the philosophy of Gramona is.
Of course. Thank you, Rick, for the introduction and for hosting us today. I think in the same line you were talking about, in Grandes Pagos, we value the maximum expression of what a terroir is. And what is a terroir? A terroir is all those elements that conform the personality of the wine, right? And most importantly, when we want to explain a wine, or we want to explain a philosophy of the winery, we must understand why and how we got there, and what conforms part of this terroir. Of course, everybody knows a terroir is conformed by the grapes, typical grapes from the region, the soils, the climate, the method of winemaking, the types of wines. And of course, most importantly, as well as important, I think, it's the history, how we got there, why are we doing this, right? And the story of Gramona, there's the story of our terroir here. We're a winery located northeastern Spain, close to Barcelona. We have a Mediterranean weather, and we are focused on sparkling wines, method champenois, right? A story started 1850s when my great-great-grandfather bought his first piece of land. He was working for a rich family from Barcelona. And later than that, to put you guys in a bit of context, Spain was at that time still a colonial power. So we were exporting a lot of wines to the colonies. Most of the wine wasn't bottled. It was just kept in barrels and sold through taverns in the cities and villages or locally, or alternatively sent through to the colonies, right? So it wasn't until the last part of the century, when we have this big infection of the phylloxera, with the French being infected all over, we were some of the unique producers of grapes around Europe. And that was a very advantageous position for all Spain, both northern Spain and southern Spain. We got the phylloxera back, this infection, a bit later. So we were the sole producers of grapes for these years. In our case, the northeastern part of Spain was approached by the French people from Bordeaux and Champagne. And these people, they needed grapes. So they started telling us that we should start doing champenois method, bubbles, in the way they did. That's the reason nowadays San Sadurní d'Anoia, which is the name of my village, is accountable for 90% of all the sparkling production in Spain. And this is the reason why we do bubbles nowadays, right? The other distinguishing fact about Gramona that we have to understand is long aging. We have in context as well, political context of the first part of the 20th century was rough. We had a lot of revolutions. We had a lot of wine stolen from either sides of the revolutions. And during during Spanish Civil War, as well as with many other wineries, we decided we would seal our caves, and all the wines that were aging would be sleeping there for all these years. So when we finally unsealed those caves, we would find that the wines that we would prefer were those that had been sleeping for longer. So that is the reason why Gramona nowadays is we are specialized in long aging. And finally, to understand this part of the history, it's the change towards ecologic, organics, and biodynamics. After all the industrialization of 1950s happened, late 90s, we saw that we were killing the soils. We were demanding too much of them. So the soils wouldn't be able to give the plants what they needed to live for 80 or 100 years. That what used to happen 100 years ago when our great-grandparents used to work the soils. So we decided to work in a more sustainable way. And this is the last big change that we did towards this type of viticulture. I think it's quite important to mention that. Also mentioning that part of our terroir, the grapes that we work in our region, in a position to most of the sparkling producing regions around the world, despite instead of working with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which is the most common grape used for sparklings, we're still focused on our local grapes. Our king grape is called Xarel·lo. It's really difficult to pronounce, but it's really good for long aging. And we are in our region distinguished by that as well. And we have a Mediterranean weather, so you can expect balance with acidity and complexity as well in our long aging wines. So I can say that our wines tend to pair well with gastronomy in overall. And finally, the last change I would say, Father, now if you can help me a little bit, would be me coming to work with you, right? We had a bit rough start, I would say. We started going to this coach, right, Father?
Yes. Yes, I can say, yeah, rough time, yeah. But it's good. So now we have Leonard and his cousin, Rock, coming with us in the last 3 years. They have been working around and having experience somewhere else. And then they ask Jaime and myself, my cousin, who is my associate in the winemaking. They ask us to go into the company. So, and they make us some few conditions. One of them was having a familiar protocol. And the other one was to go deep into biodynamics, deeper even than we were going before. And finally, they asked us to have their own project. So, and we agreed in that immediately, because we all might understand that if you have a good restaurant, it's not, it may have even some Michelin star, right? It's not a guarantee that your son will cook as in the same style and will deserve the star as you do. So that it's very good for us that the kids will have their own project. They will gain their own respect in the world of wine, so that they work with us, and on parallel, they have their own project in their free time with still wines that are not competing with Gramona sparkling wines, and they have their own philosophy, which is not
you made that for sure.
All right. Yes. Thank you. Well, and then with maybe I want to link this, Leonard, with Grandes Pagos, because the concept of pago in Grandes Pagos is not only a parcel, right? Obviously, everybody knows that champagne is mostly blending of different, sometimes vintages, but mostly different grapes. That means different parcels. And when we went into Grandes Pagos, we were explaining very clearly that we have some of our best sparklings, which are blend of, for instance, 17 different parcels. And some of our sparklings are a single parcel sparkling, but this is the less. So, and it was a long discussion in Grandes Pagos about a pago being a place where the wine comes from, which is known, and it will constantly be probably the same place for that wine, and that will give the identity to the wine, right? And then I remember Claude and Lydia Bourguignon, who are consultants at Gramona, they told us, I have 1 minute, I know. They told us one day that the land is the partiture. Do you say partiture in English? For music?
Yeah.
Ricky, yes, partiture. Then the plant is the instrument, and we are the musicians, right? And obviously, if we play a melody, we can put together different parcels, and it will be a pago as far as those parcels are control of the same, are known to make that wine. Or you can do a solo, and that solo will be probably one instrument from one parcel, right? Well, my children, or our kids, Leonard and his cousin, they are different musicians, obviously, and they are now only playing on solos. So they are only doing wines from parcels. Is that true, Leo? So you want to explain it? Oh no, I'm sorry about that. Oh no,
but I don't want to discuss here in front of everybody that some other time. We were focused on parcels,
but regardless, I think what's fascinating is you know, is seeing the multi-generational aspect, because even, I mean, I suspect, Xavier, you're doing things that are a little bit different from what was passed down to you. And so Leo is now taking that and creating his own, you know, personality within Gramona, and that everything really works together. I just wanted to show everybody. So this is, I have a bottle for each of these producers here. It's fantastic. So this is Illustros. And one of the things that Leo was mentioning earlier was how, and I love how you use the term sleeping when you're talking about the bottles resting in the cellar. And so this one woke up after 82 months. And so I think that one of the things that's fascinating is the, you know, the incredible ageability of incredibly well-made wines. And so when I was, and you might be able to see, there's like a plastic cellophane cover on this. And I will tell you that that is not done by machine, because when I was there, I actually happened to see the people that were wrapping these, and it was amazing to see them doing this. So Xavier and Leo, thank you so much for sharing with me today. And I'll let you take your argument off camera. I know you're not arguing. No,
only one thing.
No.
Only one thing, Ricky. This cellophane is organic. It's not plastic, right? Because there are few ways to do cellophane, and this way, which is the oldest way to do it from 19th century, is an organic way.
Wow.
Just to say that.
I love it. I think, see, and I mean, your philosophy carries through from absolutely everything that you do. And I love that. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. I really appreciate it. Don't go anywhere, because we'll, you know, if we have some more questions at the end. So now what we're going to do is we are going to move westward, and we are going to head towards Castilla y León, and to particular to Ribera del Duero. And with me are Miguel and Maria. This is a mother-son combination. And what's really fascinating, what I found at this point, is that Maria's first generation in starting this winery, and her son Miguel working with her. So Maria or Miguel, I don't know who's going to speak, but you know, can you tell us a little bit about, you know, the bodega, a little bit about how, you know, why start a new winery, you know, in the midst of a region that has, it does have a long history, but in some ways it has a somewhat short history, only about 40 years as a denomination of origin. So I don't know who's going to speak. If
it will be me.
Miguel, okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Rick, for the introduction. Hi, everybody. And yeah, this is a different project, which is also a nice thing about Grandes Pagos España, which can give you an idea about how different projects and different wineries are across all of Spain. And in our case, I won't spend much time talking about history, because as you just said, it was my parents who started this crazy project, let's say. It was in year 2002. They were both passionate about wine, with a lot of experience in as a consumers, let's say, and living in La Rioja for a few years in the last times. And my father they both actually just decided to start something from scratch, just the way my grandfather did a few years before. And they knew it was going to be related with wine. So they ended up in Ribera del Duero, which was a region already very, very known by my father, who had been purchasing small vineyards and planting small vines here in the region since 1980s. And we ended up in a small village called Roa, which is actually like in the heart of Ribera del Duero. Ribera del Duero follows the Duero River. It's more than 150 kilometers long, sorry. And we are right in the middle. Actually, in Roa is where the appellation, the headquarters of the appellation were built. And they were able to find 4 small plots. Okay, the total vineyard that we have, it accounts for 26 hectares. And it's divided in four big plots. When when they had the opportunity to purchase this small vineyard, which was already planted with vines less than 20, at the same time, they were lucky enough to hear about the French guy called Stéphane de Renoncourt, who wasn't very popular by that time. He was advising several wineries in Bordeaux, in Saint-Emilion. And they presented to Stéphane what they had in mind. Stéphane was really excited to start working with a different variety from what he has in Bordeaux, and with a different climate in a different country. But he was very honest to us, and he told us that he didn't make magic. Not just by hiring him, we were going to produce beautiful wine. Beautiful wines are produced at the vineyard. So he came to the region, he visited our small plots, and he fell in love with the region, with the climate, with the variety, and with the wines. We also tasted a lot of wines from the region since the beginning. The first advice Stefan gave us is, this really looks good. There is soils complexity. If you walk through the vineyards, you can see that we have a lot of different soils. That's because we have the vineyards on the top of 3 small hills. There's no big mountains in this region, in the Castilian Plateau, but there are definitely different kind of soils as you go high. So having the vineyards on the top of 3 small hills allowed us to have like less than 40% of clay, which is regular soil here in Burgos. Another 40% of sands, and the rest, it's really a big mixture between limes and clay. So this complexity on the soils was really good looking, but we didn't plant the vines on our own. So we really needed to understand what was not seen at a first glance. And he told us about, again, just like Gramona, he told us about Claude and Lydia Bourguignon. And we worked with them during the first 4 years. During these 4 years, obviously, to make Claude and Lydia happy, you have to make holes in the different plots. So we performed 80 test pit in the 4 plots. And as a result, we divided the 4 plots in 32 smaller plots. When we were doing this sub-classification, we obviously focused and saw different things about it, where there were water accumulations, where the clay gets compressed. We normally say that with this clay, you build houses. So you do really have to look after not compressing the clays. And all this information allowed us to prepare a long-term plan to improve our soils and our vineyard. And after this small classification I told you about, we focus on 2 small plots, which since the beginning seems really something different from the average. And from these 2 small plots, we decided to produce 1 wine coming from these 2 small plots, which is Maria. We only produce at the end of the process. We only produce 2 wines which come to the market. One is Alonso del Yerro, and the other one is Maria. Maria only comes from these 2 small plots, and Alonso del Yerro comes from the 30 remaining plots. Each of the plots are farmed independently, elaborated independently at the winery, aged independently, and just before the bottling is where we blend all the different wines for Alonso del Yerro and the 2 small wines for Maria. We do have an important biodynamic approach. We've been working with Stefan and Bourguignon for quite a few years, and there is certainly the idea of keeping this work ahead. Well, not using any kind of chemicals at the vineyard, obviously, producing our own compost, not using any different kind of products at the winery either, trying to respect as much as possible the fruit that we have on the vineyards every year. And that's basically what we do, okay? And that's it.
So sustainability is really kind of it's an important part. I mean, it's a very important part of everything that you do, right, Miguel?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So just so everybody can see, so this is the Alonso del Yerro from Ribera del Duero. And so again, Miguel says that they make 2 wines. So I'm going to ask, what is it like working with your mom in the winery? I'll ask you, and then I'm going to ask Maria, what is it like working with your son here?
Well, to be honest, everything really runs smooth. There's not a big deal. I spent the first. I'm agronomist. I studied agronomist at the beginning, as soon as I finished my degree, I had a faith crisis, let's say, and decided to try luck in different sectors. I didn't want to start working with my parents since the beginning. They didn't either, so it was all agreed since the beginning. I spent almost 8 years working in finance, first outside of Spain, then in back to Spain. And it was late in 2011 when I saw, after the financial crisis in Spain, my parents needing help. I'm the eldest son of 5 siblings. And I was by that time also a little bit tired about banking. So I just saw the opportunity to join forces with my parents. And since the beginning, honestly, it's been really an easy walking through.
Just so you know, Miguel, I was a banker for 20 years and I left that 3 years ago. So I can understand the desire to leave finance.
Especially being an agronomist. That was the strange thing in my life, right?
Exactly. So Maria, what is it like, having Miguel work with you and, sharing with him your passion and your vision for the work?
It was really great to have the opportunity to work with him. I trust on him absolutely. He knows that when we discuss, finally we make what he wants, always, excepting about the family, because I insist all the names of the plots comes after our children, after my children. All around the family is around the children, the grandchildren, and everything. And I insist every day in that philosophy, because my husband and I we put an accent on that. And but technically, it's Miguel who really decides, because I trust on him absolutely.
That's great.
And it's really easy to work with him.
That's good. So no fight. Well, no fighting in the winery, right?
No.
That's great. Well, thank you both for joining. I really appreciate. And so now we're going to take a little trip over to the Balearic Islands. We are going to have a chat with brother and sister winemaking team, Araceli and Javier Ribas. And so for now, what's fascinating here with Araceli and Javier is that they are the families have been making wines for a long time. They are the 10th generation of winemakers and in Bodega Ribas. So, what is it like, for the two of you to carry on such a long-standing tradition?
Well, it's a responsibility, but it's also a very nice challenge. There have been so many ancestors, and each one has contributed, and we also want to make the best for the family winery.
So what is it like working together as a brother and sister winemaking? Do you guys work on different projects and kind of put your own stamp on them, or do you collaborate together?
Yes, well, we started collaborating. We tried to, but we confronted them many times. So finally, we decided to find that was important to find a way where we could share the knowledge and not battle. So as Miguel said, join the forces, and the way that we did so was we decided to share, to give responsibilities to each other. For example, I'm responsible of the red wines, and my sister is responsible for white and rosé wines, but we support to each other when necessary.
I think that's great. So, I mean, I know that if I was trying to do something like this with my brother or my sister, that, you know, I think that it would be difficult at times. And so, I mean, I think that that's a great way to divide it. Can you guys tell me a little bit about, you know, Mallorca and just so everybody knows, the Bodega Ribas is part of the Vino de la Tierra, Mallorca. And what's really fascinating about this region is the work with indigenous grapes and with international grapes. And so can you guys tell me a little bit about how, you know, what is it like, you know, are you working more with indigenous grapes now, or what is the philosophy in your wine production?
Yes, well, first of all, I want to introduce which are our native grapes, because we have to realize that Mallorca is an island. So as an island, we suffer an isolation that helps with the differentiation of species, and in this case, the appearance of many native grapes. We work with the native grapes Manto Negro and Gargoyasa. These are the red varieties, and with the white variety Prensal. Together, this represents more or less 70% of our vineyard. And this is a part of the genetic heritage and the wine growing diversity of our islands. So we are proud of working with them. And as endemic species do, they have evolved and adjusted to the restrictive and stressful soil and climate conditions that we have in Mallorca. These native varieties are probably the ones that will adapt much better for the production of quality wines in a potential climate change scenario. This is one of the main reasons that encourage us to stand up for them. And Manto Negro, explaining a little bit of the Manto Negro, is for me responsible of the red wines. It's the grape that it's giving more retos, challenges to me. And it's a red grape with an amazing aromatic potential. But for many years, it was eclipsed by the international varieties that came in with the popularity of grapes that our grapes were lacking of. And in our region, it became popular to make blends that were more commercial and easier to understand. But there was the challenge. And personally, I've been too much time hearing the voices, having no faith in the quality of the Manto Negro, having doubts about the capacity of the Manto Negro to hold a complete or a complex wine, especially when it comes from Mallorca oldest wines, which are the ones that, oldest vines, which are the ones that we have. And after some personal failures, of course, I would be lying if I said otherwise, we can now present wines that, in our opinion, do justice with the Manto Negro.
I think that's fantastic. And I think that's fantastic, Javier, because one of the movements that I've seen in Spain in particular is working with the local grapes. And I mean, so this is one of the wines from Bodega Ribas, CO. And this one in particular is mostly Manto Negro with some Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Syrah. And but I think that it's fascinating that you're really kind of moving back towards working with indigenous grapes. Yeah. Now, do your families? Do your parents still work with the winery as well, or have they left everything to the two of you to take care of?
Yeah, well, I think now my mother's still here, but her paper is more maybe controlling or yeah, she controls us and tries to avoid.
She controls her company more than,
Yeah.
because we have freedom to do whatever we want.
Here, she acts as a judge when we have some differences.
That's good. That's actually probably good that you call in mom when you have an argument between the two of you. Well, let me ask you a question, because a question did come in regarding Ribas that I wanted to direct to the two of you while we're talking. And so somebody's asking, do you have any plans to export Ribas to the United States? And I kind of know a little bit of the backstory behind that, but maybe Araceli, maybe you can kind of share.
Yeah, of course we have plans, and we did export to the US, but there was a moment when we didn't have the capacity to sell wine. We didn't have enough production for everyone, so we focused in Europe. But now, since a few years ago, we have increased production, and it's one of the main targets. And the market in the US is very interesting. And for me, well, I did my internship in Napa Valley, so any chance that I have to travel to the US and to taste the wines, to meet the people is fantastic.
That's great. No, I actually am glad somebody asked that question. It was on my list anyways. But I do know, just so that everybody else knows, the wines of Gramona and from Alonso del Yerro are both available in the U.S. Correct? I know Gramona is, and María Alonso del Yerro is also available in the U.S. too. So, so there's a question that came in here, and I think it's a really interesting question. Xavier, you might be a good person to answer this, or maybe Beatriz. But so somebody wants to know if are there any plans to label wines as Grandes Pagos de España? Because I know that, Xavier, you went through a lot of the branding with Corpinat. And so is there a similar move for Grandes Pagos de España to become a Spanish brand and to also label as such, or is it just really truly a member organization that operates like that?
Yeah, you want me to answer? You want to answer?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, we thought of that, yes, and we might have a stamp in the bottle in the next few years. Yes. There's a certain difficulty since, as you know, when you check every year through the blind tastings who is able to use the Grandes Pagos stamp, that would mean a certain difficulty for those who doesn't approve every year, since they should either stop using the stamp or not. It's a bit like the German how do you say?
The VDP system, yeah.
Yeah, the VDP Germans, yes. As you know, they have the stamp, they have stopped using it after 2-3 years of not approving the tastings, etc., etc. So there's a certain difficulty, but we might go ahead with this since we established the blind tastings requirements some few years ago. And now that everything has been well established and it works, then we can go ahead with some stuff maybe in the near future, yes.
Yeah, I think that now, correct me if I'm wrong, Xavier. Now, the other thing would also be that each denomination of origin or each wine appellation would need to approve the use of that on a label as well. So I understand that it's not just as easy as saying, let's just put the stamp on there, but I think it's a great question as well. So I got another question that came in. This is for Araceli, and Karen wants to know, are you only working with Prensal, or are there other white grapes that you are working with? Obviously, you work with Vino Rosado as well. So you and Javier probably share some of the grape usage with that, but are there other white grapes that you're working with?
Yeah, we are working with mainly with Prensal. It represents more or less 85% of our white wines. And we do have a few plots of Viognier after an experience of my brother in the south of France. But the same as with Manto Negro, there was a moment when we eliminated the influence of other varieties like Chardonnay, that was one of the main varieties in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s in Mallorca. To try to capture the delicate flavors of the variety Prensal. Prensal is a variety, you have to compare it to another one in Spain. I would say it has a similarity to Xarel·lo, but it's unique. So our intention is that our wines provide the wines, our grapes provide the wines with primary aromas. So we tend to diminish or take out the other varieties. The case of the Viognier is because we make 100% Viognier for one of the members of my family.
Families always get preferential treatment when they want a wine. So Beatrice, I think this question is probably more designed for you. I could answer it, but I think it's better that they hear it from you. So Rafael wants is asking, can you explain the difference between Grandes Pagos de España and a Vino de Pago?
Okay, well, hello everyone. Well, as Maria explained at the beginning, Vino de Pago is an appellation, it's a legal appellation in Spain, and Grandes Pagos de España is an association of different wineries that share a philosophy of working according to the terroir, but it doesn't mean that all of them are Vino de Pago. The question comes because this association existed and was founded before the law of Vino de Pago arrived in Spain. And that's why usually there is this, this confusion. We are previous to the law, but we have here wines like Araceli wines that are Vino de la Tierra that shares the philosophy of a perfect Vino de Pago.
Yeah, so I mean, just to kind of add to that. So Vinos de Pagos are found throughout Spain, but they're predominantly in Castilla-La Mancha. And much of that was a creation of a system to help separate quality producers from a much larger appellation system. Exactly. And here you have Grandes Pagos, which as Beatrice mentioned, is a member organization. And, Xavier mentioned it earlier where, they might reach out to producers that share their philosophy. They also have producers that come to them that believe they have a similar philosophy and have to go through an application process. Beatrice, how long typically is that application process for a new winery that's coming in?
Well, Araceli and Javier just joined last year, and I think it took more or less a year and a half, Araceli, more or less.
But we have to say that we were impressed by the transparency and the rigor of the selection process.
Now, Beatrice, when somebody applies and, for example, for Araceli and Javier, they make multiple wines. Do they enter all of their wines in a tasting process to be part of Grandes Pagos de España, or do they select, one or two? How does that work when you have multiple wines like that?
Well, they can choose. They can choose if they want to enter with the whole range, or they can choose to enter with a couple, 2 or 3 wines. as they like, but they have to be the wines that reflect the terroir of the winery.
Okay, great. And Susan just says, so you do not have to be under a DO to be part of the Grandes Pagos, and that's absolutely correct. So that slide, Beatrice, can you go to that slide near the beginning that has all of the appellations on there? So I think it's really important to understand that's absolutely the case, Susan, that basically here you can see you've got all of these circles that surround Grandes Pagos are different systems, okay? And even today on this call, we have 3 different representations. We have Maria and Miguel, who are part of DO Ribera del Duero. You've got Araceli and Javier, who are part of the Vida de la Tierra. And then you have Xavier and Leo, who are the Vino Sin IGP. So they're, because they are actually labeling within the region as Corpinat. And so that's why it's very important to understand that this works as kind of an overlay to a much greater Spanish wine law system. So good. Okay, so I'm going to open this up for anybody who wants to answer the question. What do you see as the future of Spanish wine right now? Do you see more wineries moving in the direction that you are with organics and biodynamics and working with indigenous grapes? Or, what do you see changing in Spain over the next 10 years or so?
You want to talk, Miguel, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest, I think we are seeing a big polarization in the wine market in Spain. There are huge companies producing a lot of wine, and on the other side, you have like kind of different small wines with a different approach. And I think there's room for both of them, or for loads of them in the middle. We are a wine country for centuries, and for sure we will continue being so.
Yeah. And I'll actually, let me ask you, Miguel, since you were speaking, one of the changes that's happened in Ribera del Duero over the last couple of years is the addition of a white wine category. Are you planting Albillo now, and are you going to be adding that to your range?
No, we already have Albillo plants on our vineyard. Our vineyard is not the recent new, let's say, from where the DO was skyrocketing in vineyard planted. Our vines come from mid 80s, and the Albillo variety was planted in the vineyard with another big mixture of different varieties. So we do have Albillo grapes on our plots, but it's testimonial. It's less than 100%. So we just blend it with the wine and say it's 100% Tempranillo, even though we have some Albillo. But we are not trying to focus on this variety. We are not sure about the variety working on its own, and we prefer to continue doing it like it was done for a lot of years.
Super.
In the blend.
Well, so we're at the top of the hour. I want everybody, I put in the chat box, I put the website for Grandes Pagos de España, www.grandespagos.com. And so please feel free to take a look. There's a ton of information on there. You'll see all of the member wineries, all 35 wineries that are a part of that. And, but I want to, especially thank all of you today. For me, it's always, I get to share my passion for Spanish wine, and I love getting to do it with the people who are making it. And it's fun in another way to see the generations together, passing things down. And, so I want to thank all of you for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And please feel free, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to shoot them out to me. Or you can also ask questions on the contact page at Grandes Pagos de España, and we'll be happy to get answers for you. So again, thanks everybody. Have a wonderful week, and we will talk with you soon. Salud.
Thank you.
Gracias, Rick.
Thank you.